Joshua Waugh went from an incredibly hyped prospect going first overall in the QMJHL draft, but by the time his draft year came along, he slipped all the way down to the 5th round to the Montreal Canadiens, but so far he is proving almost everybody wrong and is looking like a draft steal. With 9 points in his first 20 games, Joshua Waugh has already been a fixture in the top 6 for Montreal and is already looking like one of the Habs' best forwards. So let's talk about Joshua Waugh and why he fell in his draft year and why he's looking like a fantastic pick for Montreal in today's installment of the Draft Steal series. And of course, make sure you guys watch till the end for the full breakdown of Waugh and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey and prospect content just like this. Now, when we look at Joshua Waugh, his development has maybe been one of the most interesting among any NHL prospect over the past few years. As we talked about before, he was a first overall pick by the St. John Sea Dogs all the way back in 2019, and the hype at that point was pretty exponential. And you can see in his first year with St. John, in 60 games, he had 16 goals, 28 assists for 44 points, and the sky was the limit for him. Then we go into his draft year where he split time between St. John and the Sherbrooke Phoenix, and you can see 17 points in 15 games with St. John, but then 13 goals, but 18 points in 20 games with Sherbrooke in the regular season, and I would say his draft year provided a little bit of stagnation. It wasn't incredible by any means, and even though there were some great things to like about him, like the goal-scoring pedigree and the way he was able to get a shot off, there were concerns about the upside and the actual likelihood of him making the NHL level. Now, in my own personal rankings, I had him outside the top 50, but this was a guy that I thought as maybe a 3rd rounder, maybe even late 2nd rounder, could provide some really interesting upside if he was able to get past that stagnation and finally start improving. And again, with some of these prospects, we don't know just how much the pandemic might have affected him, especially in the QMJHL's case, in Quebec's case. You go from 2020 to 2021, where it was a very dysfunctional time, and I feel like with Waugh, he could have been one of those players caught up in that storm. Now, even though the consensus was that Waugh would be outside the top 50, he was outside the top 50 for me. He was probably, again, a guy that I would assign in maybe the 3rd round and probably being drafted around that range. But we saw him drop all the way to the 5th round on the 2nd day of the draft, 150th overall to Montreal. He was such a steal that even though he was outside my top 50, him going 150th landed him in my top 10 biggest steals video after the 2021 draft. This was a player that I really thought could get major value for the Habs in the 5th round, and so far, that's proving to be true. Now, going back to that video, the big problems for me was some of the work ethic and consistency issues, and those were big problems, I think, in his draft year. It really felt like he was kind of disengaged at times, and even though he had the talent to make high IQ plays and bring things out of nothing, this was a guy that was kind of inconsistent in that regard, and I think that is one of the reasons why we saw him slip on draft day. And you also combine the fact that his skating wasn't at the greatest level, it wasn't all that interesting or all that exciting either, and Waugh was kind of a prospect that I could see why you could have a problem projecting to the next level. But here's the thing, for all those criticisms about the work ethic, it seemed like after that 2021 season, Waugh put in the work. And his next year as Sherbrooke, in 66 games, he got 51 goals, 119 points, and in the playoffs too was an absolute king. 23 points in 11 games. Absolutely insane run from him. And it would land him again an AHL playoff game too. So he got experience in almost every single way, got better in almost every single way, and was looking a lot better too. And on top of that, looking really solid at the U20 World Juniors, and Waugh was starting to look like a really good pick. And he would continue that in his next year with Sherbrooke, in his final year in the QMJHL, in 55 games, getting 46 goals, 99 points, and 24 points in 14 playoff games. Not even a 2-point per game. What a scrub. But I would say the World Juniors is where the hype for Waugh really started to get high. He was fantastic in a great complementary role for Canada, and in 7 games, got 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points. Even though he was never the pure play driver on his line, he was looking so smart, so coordinated on every single shift, knowing where he had to be to get pucks through the net and working off his teammates well. And that's exactly the type of role that I wanted to see Waugh become, that player that can really step in those big moments, and for Canada, he definitely did. But of course, with his last year in the QMJHL coming to an end, there is always question marks, especially in the QMJHL, over whether players will translate that onto the pro game. And this year, with the Laval Rockets starting in the AHL, he just ran off and was absolutely elite from day one. He was one of the AHL's leaders throughout the first couple of months, and in 40 games this year, had 13 goals, 19 assists for 32 points. It looked a lot better a couple months ago, but still, that stat line for a 20-year-old is extremely impressive. And then we'd see in January, Joshua Waugh getting called up to the NHL level and getting his opportunity to make his mark with Montreal. And in his first game versus Edmonton, even though he wouldn't get a point, I thought he looked pretty good in that game in his NHL debut. Then over the next 5 games, he would get his first NHL goal, his first NHL assist, and get a couple of points altogether. He would get sent down to the AHL again in late January, but he would get called up again in mid-February. And you see what he's been able to do since then. And really over his last 10 games or so has been incredibly impressive. This is still a player that's not getting that much ice time. I mean, he got 8 minutes of time on ice against Florida in that game on the 29th, but this is a player that's been really looking good and consistent for Montreal. And you can see over his last 4 games, 3 points, 3 goals, he's been looking really good as of late. I also just want to shout out how good analytically he's looking at 5-on-5. He's third on the Habs in expected goals for per 60, and also in terms of expected goals against per 60, he's third best as well. So he's on the right track on offense and on defense, and is already putting up great analytical stats at 20 years old, which is highly impressive. And you can also see he's been working his way up to getting a top 6 role with Montreal, and although it's definitely easier to get a top 6 role with Montreal compared to other teams in the NHL, still in Marty St. Louis' system, you have to earn it. And it took Juraj Slafkovsky tons of games before he got a look on the first line with Suzuki and Caufield. So Marty St. Louis isn't going to give you time or isn't going to give you position just because. He's going to make you earn it. And so far, Joshua Waugh has earned it in every respect. Ever since he was drafted, he has been earning it in every single place he's played. After his draft year, he's dominated the QMJHL, dominated the World Juniors, dominated the AHL, and is now, as a 20-year-old, looking great as an NHLer, which is all you could ask from him. And even though I would temper expectations a bit, I don't think he's going to be this superstar first-line player. I think this is largely what we will see Joshua Waugh be at the NHL level. Still, I think the fact that you're able to get a player already as good as Waugh from the 5th round is one of the best picks over the past few years. And Montreal's made some pretty good picks in the later rounds. Joshua Waugh, though, might be the best among them. And with Joshua Waugh, you could sense the switch that happened after his draft year, where he started to take things, I think, in every single shift a lot more seriously. You saw that right after he was drafted, where his next QMJHL season was just so dominant. And we finally saw the talent that we all knew he had being fully unlocked. The IQ, the quick plays, the way he's able to handle himself, the way he's able to push play in the right directions. He's just such a smart player, and he's finally using that more and more. He's also looking stronger. He's looking quicker. And even though I don't think he's ever going to be the greatest skater in the world, he's able to get by that with positioning and the work ethic that has changed in such a major way. I'm a big proponent that skating isn't always everything. When you're such a smart player like Joshua Waugh, you don't need to skate like Connor McDavid, but he gets the job done and pushes pace in the right ways, and that's how he's able to work so well already throughout every league he's played in. And I think Waugh was also just a symptom of a poor situation, a symptom where he wasn't being pushed as much as he needed to, and I could definitely understand how maybe if he goes in the Montreal system, how he realizes the stakes that are here, how he was dropping to the 5th round, just how much his stock was lowering, and he needed to prove to the hockey world just how good he was. And we've seen how much he's proved over the past couple of years, that is for sure. Now, there are going to be people overreacting to get sent back down to the AHL again, but if they do go on a playoff run with the Laval Rocket, then to me, Waugh would be really benefiting from that, getting some playoff experience at the pro level, and I think he'd look pretty good doing it. I mean, his last couple of playoffs have all been pretty fantastic, and he's already been great at the AHL level, and I think could do some very good things down there in the playoffs. Now, the thing is, for me, even though I was higher on Joshua Waugh, I always saw him as a player that would be this fantastic middle 6 guy in the NHL, or I would say on the lower end, just very great third-line player that can be versatile, that can make the right plays, that can be smart in every single shift, and we kind of see Waugh be up that alley already. I'm not quite sure how much more we're going to see in Waugh's game besides him just getting stronger, maybe even more consistent with the work ethic, and just getting maybe a little bit faster in that direction. But to me, Waugh and what he's been able to accomplish already at 20, even if we don't see that much more improvement, he's already a good NHL player at 20 years old, and if the Habs have gotten that in the 5th round, then you're laughing at that point. And you also look at where the Habs got him in the draft, and it's an absolute joke how much they were able to rob him. I mean, you had a player like Justin Robitaille at 147th overall, and Robitaille could still be interesting, but he's an ECHLer at 21 years old, a player smaller than Waugh, and although he's putting up points there, again, these were 2 QMJHL guys drafted almost back-to-back. Yet Waugh has just proven so much since his draft year and has just improved so much that he's a guy that you could see being in the 1st round in a redraft. Again, I thought I was high on Joshua Waugh, having him around the 60 to 70 range, but this is a guy that, if we're just rating on points in the 2021 draft already, is 12th. And he's played 20 NHL games. Now, sure, you also have Logan Stanko, which we talked about a couple weeks ago as maybe the biggest steal of the draft. But Waugh is right up there, man. Has already looked great for Montreal and is already looking like one of the better forwards drafted, which is incredible to think about. And it's great for Waugh to see this transition. It's incredible to see the progression in his game because he's always had the talent to be one of these top tier players. And I'm glad we're finally starting to see that really blossom in Montreal's system. And you look at the 2021 draft, man, and all these guys around him, all the players drafted. You have some great steals like Nyes and Stankoven, but you got players like Matthew Coronado, who's already ahead of as top 15 picks. And it's just insane how good of a pick 150th overall has become. Now, this all depends on who the Habs end up drafting in the upcoming draft this year, but I could see a scenario where Waugh likely slots in as maybe a second-line left wing or a really premier third-line left wing. It just depends on if they draft a center, if they see Newhook as a center long-term. There's a lot of question marks still to Habs in their lineup going in the future, but no matter what, I think Waugh is going to be a mainstay on that middle six for a very long time. He's already proved he can do that in limited minutes with Montreal already, and I think by the time that he gets older, gets stronger, even more mature, that Waugh is going to be one of these really interesting, really impactful middle sixers that you want to have on a Stanley Cup winning team. Waugh has already put up great results in the playoffs as well, and I think it's just a matter of time before he's a mainstay on Montreal's top six, and we'll see if he gets bumped down at all, but I think for the Habs, they have something special here brewing in Waugh, and it's great to see the progression that he's been able to come up with. Let me know, does Waugh maybe fit more as a second-line player, a third-line player? Because this is a guy that I could see kind of going all over the lineup. He's a very versatile guy. If you want to put him on the first line as a complementary piece, then I think he'd excel there too. It's one of those players that just brings value no matter where he plays, and that's going to be really valuable for the Habs in the future. And I just gotta say, in the recent drafts for Montreal, they've had some pretty good late-round picks as of recent. Yevgeny Volokhin is looking really good in Russia. Filip Eriksson in the Allsvenskan has been looking fantastic there too. You go to the 2022 draft, and I'm really liking Adam Engstrom in the third round as well. And then you got that 2021 draft, Joshua Waugh looking incredible as a pick already. Sean Farrell back in the fourth round in 2020. Jacob DeBesch as well in the fifth round. And Montreal's been doing pretty good with their late-round picks as of late, and that's really nice to see. I think there's a case to be made looking back on the 2021 draft that besides maybe Logan Stankoven, that was one of the bigger draft steals in the entire draft there, if not number 2 behind Stankoven. And I think that's pretty incredible to watch just in terms of where he was drafted, what he is right now. The progression has been awesome. But I want to know in the comments down below what you guys think about Joshua Waugh's game. How do you see him progressing with Montreal over the next few years and throughout his career? How good do you see him being? How much of a draft steal do you think he is? Let us know all your thoughts down below, folks. And of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for the breakdown if you guys enjoy and want to see more like it. And of course, share the video with all the hockey and Habs fans you guys know online. And also click on this card for all my hockey prospects content that you can binge right there, right now. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you have a great hockey day, guys, and goodbye.